This is the story of how the economic heart of Europe was hijacked. The port of Antwerp, 4 years, a gang known as the Makreelbende moved an invisible river of cocaine through its docks, using its greatest strength efficiency as their ultimate weapon. They didn't need bullets, only bribes, intelligence, and a near-perfect criminal method to bypass security and bring authorities to their knees. Get ready to learn how they built their empire right under everyone's noses, and the incredible chain of mistakes that led to their downfall. To understand how a criminal gang could bring a continent to its knees, you first have to understand the weapon they used, the port of Antwerp itself. It's not just a port, it's a logistical universe. More than 90 million containers move through the European Union each year, and Antwerp is one of its epicenters. Its operation depends on an endless chain of actors: shipping companies, hauliers, dock workers, customs agents. Hundreds of companies, thousands of people with access to sensitive information, schedules, locations. Every link in that chain is a potential breaking point. The press soon nicknamed it the Black Hole of Europe, a sinkhole for crime. It became the main entry point for cocaine from South America. Shipments from Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama found their safest route to the European market in Antwerp. The official figures are the chronicle of a silent invasion. In 2022, 110 tons of cocaine was seized. In 2023, a new record was set: 116 tons. But the authorities themselves admit that this is just the tip of the iceberg, barely a fraction of what actually gets through. The system wasn't broken. It was working as it was designed, to move goods, not to stop them. And in this systemic vulnerability, one organization saw the perfect playing field to build an empire. They were not common criminals. They were methodical, organized, and ambitious. They called themselves the Makreelbende, the Mackerel Gang. They operated more like a multinational corporation than a street gang. They had a clear structure and a defined hierarchy, with specialists for each phase of the operation. At the top, operating from the luxurious safety of Dubai, was Nordin E.H., better known as Dick Nordin, or Nordin the Fat. He was the CEO. In the shadows, the strategist who ran a network that stretched across Belgium and the Netherlands. On encrypted phones, he used the alias NWA, an acronym for Never Work Again, a promise of the wealth his business offered. But the real operational genius, the man who designed the method that made them legendary, was Abdelilah LM, nicknamed the King of the Switch. He was the innovator who perfected the gang's smuggling technique, elevating it to a criminal art form. His rise from illegal cannabis cultivation to becoming the mastermind of large-scale cocaine operations was the stuff of legend in the underworld. Unlike any corporation, they had key employees, men like Renzo Q, a port worker who led a double life. By day, he moved containers. By night, he was the organization's banker. In his house, the police found more than €1 million in cash. Or like Nordin EM, a planner within the port system, the mole who moved the pieces on the board from his desk, placing the containers right where the gang needed them. Together, they didn't just traffic drugs. They managed a criminal enterprise with terrifying efficiency. The Makreelbende's method, known as the switch method, was of brilliant simplicity and complex execution. They didn't seek to breach the port's security, but to use its own rules against it. It was a masterpiece of logistical exploitation that unfolded in 4 lethal phases. First, intelligence. The gang corrupted key personnel within logistics companies to obtain critical information, the unique reference codes of the containers. With these codes, they knew exactly which container, arriving from South America, was loaded with their valuable merchandise. Second, manipulation. This is where their mole, the planner Nordin EM, came into play. Using his access to the port's computer system, he would order the movement of two containers, the hot container from South America and the clean container of European origin. He would place them next to each other in a blind spot on the quay, a place without security cameras, hidden behind a wall of other containers. Third, the exchange. This was the moment of greatest risk. Under the cover of darkness, a team of corrupt dock workers would spring into action. They would break the seals, move the bags of cocaine from the South American container to the European one, and reseal it. A quick, precise, and silent operation. And fourth, the extraction. A haulier from the organization would pick up the European container, now loaded with drugs, for customs. It was a simple shipment within Europe, a low-risk movement that was rarely inspected. The risk of being discovered plummeted. The method was almost infallible, but this sophisticated system had a dirty, desperate side. For the physical work, the extraction of the drugs, the gang recruited the so-called youth-ellers, young people, often minors, aged 14 or 15, attracted by the promise of easy money. They were paid between 500 and 1,000 euros per kilo recovered to sneak into the terminals and get the merchandise out, taking all the risk. They were the disposable cannon fodder in a multi-million euro war. Every major criminal organization has a weak point: arrogance, violence, a human error. For the Makreelbende, their downfall didn't begin on the docks of Antwerp, but with a gunshot on a street in Amstelveen, in the Netherlands, in 2014. The victim was a Dutch criminal, known for his involvement in international drug trafficking, another settling of scores, apparently, but during the investigation of his murder, the police found something on his body. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't drugs, it was something much more valuable, a simple USB drive. When they plugged it in, investigators found no photos or personal documents. They found a treasure trove. The drive contained confidential information from the shipping company MSC, ship schedules, container movements in the port of Antwerp, lists of identification numbers. It was the operations ledger, the irrefutable proof that someone from within was leaking the port secrets. That small digital device was the first thread to pull. The police finally had a tangible clue to start unraveling a web that would lead them to the heart of one of Europe's most sophisticated drug trafficking networks. They didn't know it then, but the murder of a mid-level criminal had just doomed an empire. The violence the gang used to protect its business had become the seed of its own destruction. The years passed. The investigation progressed slowly. The Makreelbende and hundreds of other criminal organizations felt untouchable, protected by a digital fortress called SkyECC. It was an encrypted phone service, advertised as impossible to hack, the perfect tool to coordinate crimes on a global scale with total impunity. But in 2021, the impossible happened. In an unprecedented operation, coordinated between the police forces of Belgium, France, and the Netherlands, with the support of Europol, the authorities achieved what SkyECC itself promised would never happen. They broke the code. 4 months, the police read in real time billions of messages that criminals believed were secret. It was like turning on the light in a room that had been dark for years. The operation was a turning point, a breakpoint in the fight against organized crime. The messages revealed everything. They saw Nordin EH giving orders from Dubai. They read the planning of shipments of tons of cocaine. They saw how grenade attacks were organized and officials were corrupted. They discovered money laundering networks that stretched across the continent. The veil of secrecy had been lifted. On March 9, 2021, the trap was sprung. Operation Sky was launched with more than 1,600 officers deployed in over 200 simultaneous raids across Belgium. It was the largest police action in the country's history. The technology that had been the pillar of the gang's power became the hammer of its destruction. Their greatest strength was their downfall. The war on drugs had entered a new era, the era of digital warfare. The dominoes' fourth impact of Operation Sky was immediate and devastating. The raids resulted in dozens of arrests, dismantling the operational structure of the Makreelbende. The blow was followed by a relentless judicial offensive. In December 2020, in one of the largest drug trafficking trials in Belgian history, 25 members of the gang were found guilty. The ringleaders received sentences of up to 8 years in prison. But justice did not stop there. In a decision that sent a clear message to the criminal world, the Court of Appeal only upheld the sentences, but stiffened the sentences, for the leaders were increased to 9 years in prison. The attack was not only against the people, but also against their fortune. The court ordered the confiscation of more than 8 million euros in criminal assets, from the million found at the home of dock worker Renzo Q, to investments in restaurants and real estate. The hacking of Sky ECC was the Pandora's box of European crime. The information obtained not only served to dismantle the Makreelbende, but also opened the door to hundreds of other investigations. In the following 3 years, the Sky ECC data led in Belgium to 586 court cases, more than 1,000 convictions, and the seizure of almost 183 million euros in criminal assets. It was an earthquake that shook the foundations of the underworld across the continent, proving that the new frontier in the fight against crime was not on the streets, but on the servers. The fall of the Makreelbende did not bring peace. On the contrary, it unleashed hell. Like a mythological hydra, cutting off one head only made more appear, and much more violent ones. The dismantling of the gang's power structure created a vacuum that other organizations rushed to fill with blood and fire. Antwerp became a battlefield. Violence skyrocketed. In 2022 alone, the city recorded 81 incidents involving explosives and shootings related to gang wars, but the escalation reached its most terrifying point in September 2022. The target was no longer a rival, it was the state itself. The police foiled a plot to kidnap the Belgian Minister of Justice, Vincent van Quickenborne. A car with Kalashnikov rifles was found near his home, forcing the minister and his family to be moved to a safe house. Drug trafficking had declared war on the government. This direct attack on the country's sovereignty sparked an urgent and terrifying national debate. Was Belgium becoming a narco state? Senior prosecutors warned that the Mafia is taking over the country. The mayor of Antwerp denounced that drug money was poisoning society, infiltrating politics and legitimate businesses like real estate and hospitality to launder billions. The government's response was the Stromplan XXL, an ambitious security plan to centralize police operations, drastically increase the number of customs officers, and, above all, investigate the criminal and financial backgrounds of the 16,000 port workers to combat corruption. But the initiative faces a complex reality, a fragmented political system and resources that always seem insufficient to combat an enemy with almost unlimited financial capacity. The fight was no longer against crime. It was for control of the state. The story of the Makreelbende is a chronicle of a meteoric rise and a spectacular fall. They were pioneers of a new form of organized crime, as sophisticated as the global logistics they exploited, and they were defeated by a combination of tenacious police work and a technological breakthrough that changed the rules of the game. But despite this victory, the war is far from over. Antwerp remains the cocaine capital of Europe. Criminal networks have adapted. They have learned from the mistakes of the Makreelbende, diversified their methods, and continue to recruit vulnerable young people for their wars. The case of the Makreelbende is more than a true crime story. It is a warning about the dark side of our interconnected world. It shows how the same systems, designed to unite and prosper, can be corrupted to poison us. The shadow of drug trafficking still looms over the docks of Antwerp, and the battle being fought there is not just for the security of a city or a country. It is a battle for the future of Europe. Thank you for staying until the end. Behind every video are hours of research to bring you the complete story. If you value that effort, the best way to support us is by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next investigation.